Welcome everybody. XAT Z2. Just one more left. Taking you through the analysis of the quant and DI part. Ajit sir will follow with the verbal and decision making. A test which was a little difficult. Again, a little biased towards geometry. Quite a lot of questions on geometry. Let's see the paper. Let's first see the topic distribution, then we'll go to the questions and the expected attempts. There are 8 questions on geometry. As I said, a little biased towards geometry this time, a little more weighted there. 6 questions on DI, data interpretation, 3 from data sufficiency. Percentage had 2 and quadratic equations had 2. Rest all the chapters had, topics had 1 question each. Averages, there was 1 from averages, inequalities, logarithm, numbers, profit loss, SICI, and surds and indices. A total of 28 questions. Let's see how many of these were easy and moderate. Out of these 28, 4 questions were easy, 10 were moderate, 13 were either difficult or time consuming, a little lengthy, and 1 was a little very difficult question. The easy ones, what set of DI was easy? 8 teams, every team played 1 game every day. Seemed like a little frightening the way the charts were displayed, the table was displayed. And maybe we thought it will be difficult questions were following. But this was a little easy. An easy way to even interpret how many, on which day, which team won a game or lost a game. So very easy representation and quite easy questions. The question on percentage also was easy. Maybe you could even call it a question on ratio proportion variation. 2 values were inversely proportional, so maybe you can call this even variation. 1 decreases by 50%, what would happen to the other? So a very simple, straightforward question here. There were 10 moderate questions. 1 was on surds and indices. It was just a simplification question. Simplification, ideally, this should be quite more easy, not a moderate question. But then again, the problem was ABC were not directly related and there was no equation. So there was a little bit of trial and error. So maybe because of the lengthy part, I'm putting it as moderate. The cube root of this part is an integer. So all that is to us to find values of ABC from the options, which would make it an integer. Averages. 30 students of a class take a test. And then there's data on marks. Some students got so many marks, some students got so many marks, and rest got so many marks. You have to find the difference between the mean and the median. So quite straightforward question. Geometry. This could have been difficult, but the way it was put up was quite easy. A metal cylinder is cast into cones with 1/6 base area. The base area ratio is given. Height is also given. Height becomes 1/3. How many cones would be there? How many cones would be got? So quite an easy question as such, but again, just putting it as a moderate because it's still to be understood that out of 1 cylinder, how many cones can be made of the same base area and same height. Just because of that, I'm putting it as moderate. Another geometric question was, what is the largest number of congruent circles that can touch another congruent circle of the same congruent circle, same radius? So if there is one circle, how many circles can you place around it? And all touching this original circle. So that was the question. So seemed like difficult question, but somebody could do it practically and somebody could just remember to play carom. If you had played carom, this question would be easy. One question was on profit and loss. Cost is marked up by X% and then 4/5 of X% is given as a discount, resulting in a 10% loss. So ultimately what was needed was to calculate the value of X. The question was, what is the value of X square plus X? Ultimately what we need is the value of X. So that was quite easy, just calculating the value of X. Data sufficiency had two questions which were moderate. One was that three numbers are given in an AP and the question is what is the common difference because they are in an AP. Two statements followed. One statement gave the difference between the first and the last, which was a tempting part. That was a tempting part. Just knowing the difference doesn't give you the common difference because there is an order. Is it plus something or minus something? That was the key part there. The second was ABC is a scalene triangle. Scalene, all sides are different. That was to be understood. With integer side, all the lengths were integers. Is it an acute? So the second option there was a straight up good enough to see that yes, it is enough to say because it said that the perimeter was the least possible. So when something is the least possible, unless there are multiple ways of putting this perimeter as the least possible, you can easily judge whether it is scalene or whether it is acute or obtuse or right. So that was easier there. There were another set, data interpretation, 3 questions, a little moderate. 4 companies selling cars and only these 4 companies selling cars. Line graph gives their market shares for some years. And then there's linking data given in the passage. For a particular car, the growth in this particular year is given, difference is given. So 3-4 statements are made to link the actual, to find the actual for a particular year. So quite a moderate set. Almost all 3 questions were doable. Among the difficult, one data sufficiency question was there. Rather than difficult, it was a little more lengthier. The summation of 2 integers s is less than 100. What are the 2 integers? Now both the statements would have to be tried, solved. They cannot give you something, then combined, and again a lot of calculations to know, and almost you have to reach till the last value actually finding the 2 integers. So that became a little lengthier. Both the integers could be found combined, but that became a little lengthy. Geometry, the other 6 questions. One was the very difficult one. The other 5 questions here. This was time consuming. First one. 2 lines intersect at a point P. Now, one of the lines is given as a straight, simple line, but one line, the second line from that set, had a variable. It's something like saying that 2x plus 3y is equal to a. So there was an a that had to be found ultimately. Another set of 2 lines intersect at Q. Now here both the lines are given and Q could have been found quite quickly. And PQ, the segment joining P and Q, has a slope of -3. This was data. So that constant in the first set of equations, first set of lines was to be found. So all you had to do was do the reverse calculation. You know the point Q, you know the slope, and go on to find the point P and find out that variable. So lengthy. Next was a square. In a square, an angle is trisected from one of the vertices. From one of the vertices trisected, of course, the interior angle in a square is always 90 degrees. So it was trisected. There were 3 parts, all having 30 degrees. from another adjacent angle is also trisected and only one line is drawn, of course. So there is a triangle formed, a particular triangle. All you have to do was find the ratio of the areas of the triangle and the square. Because it is all 30, 60, 90 triangles, all angles would be 30, 30, 30, and then 30, 60, 90 triangles would be formed. So it was a little calculative finding the sides. And I've seen in a few of the last papers, one thing that usually puzzles students, sine theta. Some of these sine angles, at least the standard 5 sine theta angles, the values should be known. Sine 0, sine 45, sine 30, sine 60, and sine 90. These values should be known to all. Because here you would find the area of a triangle in terms of half AB sine theta. You will have to use that value. Theta is already known, 30 degrees. But then knowing the sides was to be calculated. We have still, I think, somewhere one more question where theta is included. So knowing these values is a little important. The next was the two lines are perpendicular and they intersect at a point P. A circle has a center on one line and is tangential to the other line at this point P. So it is touching the second line, but we do not know whether the center is on the left side or the right side. So that is why there was a question, what could be the summation of the coordinates of the center? What could be? It did not ask you what is, it said what could be. So because of the two possibilities, the question is what could be. So a little difficult question. The next was ABCD is a square. P and Q are midpoints of BC and CD. So two midpoints are given. What is the value of sine BAPM sine BAQ? Again, sine theta, as I said. Not very difficult question. Just because of the sine theta, maybe you would think of it as difficult. So quite straightforward. Just find the values of the two sine thetas and get the ratio. The next was ABCD is a rhombus with sides x. All the four sides, of course, in a rhombus are equal. Now, one angle is between 120 and 135 degrees. Obviously, the other would be the angle will be supplementary. So it would be between 45 and 60. Now, the question was, what is the range of area of this rhombus? Again, as I said, sine theta. Area of a triangle is half AB sine theta. That equation was to be used here. Make sure that you at least remember this now. So here also you had sine of 45 degrees and sine of 60 degrees to be used. Okay. Now, a few more questions were there. Inequalities. Not very difficult as such, a little lengthy. Most of the questions in this are a little different. Here you have to do the counting of integers. Before that, you have to understand that what is mentioned in front of you is an AP. How many integers satisfy the following inequality? Now, dot 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 in between clearly shows that there has to be a pattern. -1 +3 +7. This shows that it is an AP increasing in 4. So you have to see how many terms are there, and then which of these terms would give you a negative result. You want less than 0, and then counting those, how many are there. So a little tricky, lengthy, otherwise good enough. Logarithms. If n is equal to log of 127 minus 48 root 7, so logarithm of this number divided by logarithm of root of 8 plus 3 root 7, which of the following equals n? So the value of n was to be found. That means this is just a simplification question. How to simplify, that was the only key issue. The two numbers which are given have to have some connection. They must be related to each other. Maybe a square or a root or something. So whichever appears to be a bigger number must be the square or cube or fourth power or fifth power of something, of the smaller number. So just understanding this was the key part. Numbers 1 to n, where it is given that n is even, 1 to n numbers are written. Elder brother comes and writes the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4 till n. And behind him, the younger brother comes and starts erasing those numbers from 1. The last number erased was x. And sum of the remaining is given as 143. What is n plus x? That was the question. So finding out which was the largest number, which was the smallest number, that was the erased, largest number written and largest number erased, and adding these. One more question was of percentage. 4 colleagues got the following percentage increments. Now, ideally, this should not be difficult, but there's a plus sign and a minus sign that probably might have just distracted people. But the simple relation is just add the two numbers for each person. Everybody has got 2x plus 6 percentage. So the summation of the two numbers for everybody is common. That was to be identified. It is 2x plus 6 for everybody. And then, of course, it is saying that the salaries are equal after this. At the end, the salaries are equal. So who had the highest increment? The highest increment obviously will be the person who had the highest salary. Sorry. So highest salary will be for that person who has the least increment. So this was understanding that if 40% is given as a straight, somebody gets 0% and 40%, and somebody gets 10% and 30%, somebody gets 20% and 20%. Who had the highest increment? So that was just to be understood. The effect of two successives. Two questions were on quadratic equations. An equation is given, two equations were given. An equation is given where you have a and b as variables. And it is given that one of the roots is 7 plus 3 root 5. The equation was x square minus ax plus b plus 6 root 5 is 0. Now, it is given that one of the roots of this equation is 7 plus 3 root 5. Then what is the sum of a and b? What is the sum? A plus b. Or I think it was a plus b by 2. Now, easy question as such, but just we might not know where to start. The summation is of the roots would be an integer a. The two roots would give you an integer a. The product will have both the parts, rational and irrational, b plus 6 root 5. So it has an integer part b and it has an irrational part 6 root 5. So this is where you have to understand that what would be the root. The other root must have got one part which is minus 3 root 5. That was to be understood. Once you understand that the other root for the summation of the two roots to be some integer, the other root must have got something minus 3 root 5. If that is understood, the rest is just a little bit of calculation. The second quadratic equation was that if x square plus x plus 1 is 0, what is the value of this? Ideally, this is based on the cube roots of unity. And it was supposed to be a question on that, but this question has become quite easy rather than what it appears to be. The last difficult question was simple interest and compound interest. But what made it easy was the little bit of approximation. Although the options were quite close. An article worth rupees 25,000 is sold at a down payment of 5,000. So the remaining amount is 20,000. And this is paid in 4 and monthly installments, reckoning considering 1% per month interest. So what will be the installment? So although there is an approximation, the options made it a little more difficult or rather accurate. You had to be a little more accurate to calculate. So DI approximations, a little more accuracy was required. That's why I'm putting this as rather the difficult than moderate. The last was the geometry difficult question. A rectangle is given ABCD. The length and the breadth are given. AB is 3 and BC is 6. The length is 6 and the breadth is 3. And P is a point on BC so that BP from one vertex, BP is 1 centimeter. What is the angle CAP? CA would be the diagonal and CAP, the angle would be found. What is the angle? So again, either you use the sine rule, or maybe you use tan theta or sine theta, sine A plus B, or simply the sine rule which everybody knows. Maybe you know, you're not supposed to know, or you might not know what is sine of A plus B, how to write that, but sine rule of the triangles should have been known. So one of those could be used to find the angle. So a little difficult there, very difficult I'm putting it as. So that is the 28 questions of this paper, DI and quant. Now let's see the expected approaches attempts. Out of the 4 easy questions, I would expect everybody to solve those 4. Moderate, there were 10 questions. Maybe you will miss 1 or 2. You will think of them as difficult and maybe you will just leave them. So I still expect you to solve 8. And out of the difficult and time consuming, if you want a 98 percentile, then I would expect you to solve 6 out of those. And you can leave that very difficult question. So I'm expecting that everybody who expects 98 percentile should attempt 18 questions with a good, fairly good accuracy. So if you attempt 18, I would expect 15 right and 3 wrong, maybe 3 wrong. 15 right gives you 15 marks and 3 wrong would give you 3 quarters negative. So 14.25. So very close to that is what I can expect for 98. I'm taking 98 as 13.6 because there's some deduction even for the unattempted questions. So I'm reducing a little bit there. For 98 percentile, I'm assuming that 13.6 would be a fairly good score for 98 percentile. This takes us to 15 for 99 percentile and for 100, 17.5. That should be for the 100 percentile or 99.5 percentile. 95 percentile can be achieved at around 12 marks. 10.3 marks could give you somewhere around 90 percentile. 7 marks, 80 percentile, and 5.75 for a 75 percentile. That's the breakup of the percentile and score mapping. Just one more mock to go, I believe. Wish you all the best for your exam. I would invite Ajit sir to take over from here.
Yes, Saurabh sir, thank you so much. Happy New Year, everyone. Happy New Year, Saurabh sir. 2021 has started.
Yes, Happy New Year to all.
So, we just started 2021 and I hope people were happy with the way the paper worked out over 2021 because like everything should be on XAT. This is one more paper where all you do is just identify what to not attempt. So, what was the paper like? What did we do? What did you do on the paper? Let's show you. Exact XAT2 for people who have been associated, who have been giving endeavor mocks for a long time. Obviously, you guys know that when it's an exact paper, it has to be a replica of something. So today, what you saw was a replica of XAT 2019, the paper that was conducted almost 2 years ago. And what did we do with this test? Well, we created a paper which was a mix of easy to moderate questions, not a lot of difficult questions in both the sections. You will see when I come to the sectional analysis, but otherwise also, I think verbal with the number of questions in RC going down would have been slightly more enticing to some of you. So yeah, just 14 questions in RCs, 4 passages with 3 questions each, 1 RC with 2 questions. Critical reasoning went up. Honestly, not a very challenging critical reasoning section, although I can understand like when I say not a very challenging section, you guys are like would be like nahi sir aapko to lagta hai humko pucho kitna difficult lagta hai. So still I think 45 minutes, mein se, if you guys had given like 20 minutes to passages or maybe 22 minutes, that would have been more than sufficient because the passages anyways did not have a lot of easy questions. Rather, your easy questions were hidden in vocabulary and critical reasoning and verbal logic. So overall difficulty level, moderate to difficult. Can I ever call a XAT section easy or easy to moderate? I haven't seen it in the last 15 years that I've been observing XAT. Hopefully someday XAT is going to break its glass ceiling and come out with a paper that we can call easy to moderate. Till then, good luck. So what did we have? First passage, women, fire and dangerous things. The kind of passage where you know that passage is taken from a sort of a magazine or a newspaper or something. Yeah, the first passage came at question number 3. 3 questions, 2 moderate, 1 difficult, fairly moderate to read passage. I would label it moderate, not a easy to read passage, because honestly it was not a very easy to read passage, like with the time constraints and because the author was getting into a debate on things that involved a lot of topics. I wouldn't really call it an easy to read passage. 1. Next was what? Next was a poem. So how do we classify the difficulty level of a poem? The classification of the difficulty level of a poem is, it is a poem. There is no classification. It's never easy, moderate, difficult. It is just a poem. So yes, you had a poem. How small? It was a sonnet, 14 lines, 8 plus 6, approximately 100 words. 2 questions, undoubtedly both of them difficult. Like one, no, you don't go into a test expecting a poem and then you get a poem and you are anyways thinking about, okay, so should I attempt this? Should I not attempt this? What do I do? If I attempt this, will I get it right? Difficulty rakho nahi yaar. If you are not mentally prepared to handle a poem, no matter what happens, don't get into a poem on your XAT. RC3, auctions as a market mechanism. Again, for people, because you guys have been attempting so many papers, not a very difficult to read paper. I would say essay, moderate to read. For some of you, it might have been fairly easy to read also. 3 questions. This is where I come across my first question, which was easy. There were 2 questions which were moderate. Overall, this would be the sort of must-do passage on your test. The passage that you should not have missed. 4th passage, from auctions as a market mechanism that talked about real life situations, we went to, what does a portrait tell you? What does a portrait tell me? It does not tell me anything. No, there is something about the stature. When you read those kind of passages, you are like, yaar, duniya mein kitne velle log baithe. Like, how do people have so much free time? And then in a passage like that, which is anyways difficult to read, you get a main idea question. What does that tell you? That tells you, ye passage attempt nahi. You should not have attempted this passage. But maybe you did because you did not want to attempt the poem. Did we have anything else? Yes. The last passage, I think, was the easiest of all because I had 1 easy question and 2 moderate questions. One, maybe you would have started seeing a trend that on the papers that we've been giving you, and specifically papers where we make a replica of an actual XAT paper, your easy passage does not come up really early in the sequence. That easy passage is tucked in between moderate to difficult things. It is located at a particular position in the paper where a lot of you might not just reach because you just climbed a mountain. You never looked at it strategically. So because you've taken so many mocks, I think by the time you give the XAT, I hope that by the time you give the XAT, you guys will improve your ability to sniff, smell, read, do whatever. 3 questions, not 4 questions. Yeah, that's a mistake there. Whatever you do, identify the easy passages. Okay. Verbal analysis, you had in terms of verbal logic and critical reasoning, you had 6 questions, classifications, you had an assumption question, moderate, resolve the paradox, easy, a method of reasoning question, which was moderate, an inference question, which was moderate, then again, another inference question. So basically question 22 was an applied information question, but in critical reasoning, it would qualify under an inference question only. So that, and then I had what? Then I had my analogy, clearly a difficult one. Why a difficult one? Because many of you would not even know the words. So if you don't know the words, how do I classify an analogy as an easy question? That's never possible. Parables, both of them 5 sentences, both of them next to each other. God bless it, the person who created the paper. 5 sentences. The first one, a very, very recent topic, soliloquy and lockdown, people talking about with themselves, easy to read, slightly tricky to link, overall moderate. Second one, where did the humans first travel? Not the most exciting of 5 sentences that you will ever read, followed by moderate to read, again tricky to link. That's what I said last time also. Like that knows that people have practiced a lot of parajumples and it is not expected to give easy parajumpling questions. So that brings me to the last part, a XAT paper that did not have any grammar. Instead, it had 4 questions on vocabulary. 3 sentence completion questions. Not that those questions were easy, those were fairly challenging. Moderate, difficult, and moderate. Again, nobody wants to look at 8 words and find out 3 because that, in any case, that it only makes your life difficult. So moderate, difficult, moderate. One antonym question, fairly easy. Like if there was this one question that I wanted you guys to get right today, it had to be this question, the antonym question. Very, very easy question. So that should, for the next mock and your actual XAT, give you some pointers. Look out for the passages, find out the passages that are easy to read, have a look at the questions, and then decide whether you want to go ahead with that passage. 1. 2, when you look at, search out for your vocab based questions. No matter what your level of vocab, search out for the vocab based questions. When you look at the question, either you will know whether you want to attempt it or you will know whether you don't want to attempt it. The level of the vocabulary should tell you whether that question is an easy or a moderate question. Grammar, if it comes up in XAT this year, you guys know whether you are already good with grammar or is it something that you have left out, that you have not prepared for in the last few weeks, primarily because for many of you, grammar is just out of curriculum. And what does that leave you with? Leaves you with critical reasoning and verbal logic. With XAT's propensity to include these two, I'm pretty sure all of you have been working on your critical reasoning and verbal logic skills. Right. Again, XAT 2019 pattern, 21 questions. Technically, I would want you guys to give 50 minutes to this section, but I've written 45. I've written 45 because I know that this was a very reading intensive section. There were a lot of long caselets, and when I say 45, I know that people would have ended up giving it 50 minutes. Difficulty level moderate. 1 caselet based on logical reasoning, ethics based questions, 7 spread out over 5 caselets. A total of, so this one had a total of 7 to 8 caselets, and situation based questions, 13 questions spread out over 5 caselets. So that makes it 13 plus 7 plus 1, 21 questions. First caselet, a completely business situation based decision making, 2 moderate questions, 1 difficult questions. Every time you come across a difficult question in decision making, you know that it is because apparently either the question doesn't make sense to you or it does, but the effort to find the answer is a lot. When I talk about moderate questions, the question might be easy to read, but the answer choices are pretty close. So all of those questions where the answer choices are close, I would call them moderate only. I would call them difficult. Caselet 2, ethics based decision making. 2 questions. Definitely something that you would want to do, whatever you want to call it, a real life situation, an academic situation, just the kind of set that you definitely want to attempt. Third one, again, a business situation based decision making. 3 questions. The second caselet that I definitely want you to do today. 1 moderate question, 2 easy questions. Fourth, business situation plus ethics, health heal company. 2 moderate questions, 1 difficult question, out of which both the moderate questions were ethics based. The difficult question was business situation based. So would you rather attempt this passage? If you have attempted the previous 2, the capitalism one and the passage after that, ROG's expansion plans, then this is like a 50-50 case. Maybe you would want to attempt, maybe you would not want to attempt. Technically, if I had to recommend, I would recommend you to try this one because this was shorter, a lot shorter than Sarah's maternity plans. Obviously, not a very difficult passage to read, but the questions were close. The answer choices were pretty close. The questions were not so easy. So when you compare this and the maternity plans wala passage, I call it ethics based also because you are likely to get swayed by your emotions. That should not happen. So compared to this, which had just 2 questions, I will think with the same amount of investment, here you have one moderate and one difficult. In the previous one, you have 2 moderate and 1 difficult. With the amount of time that you spent into the Sarah maternity plan caselets, in the same time, I think in the previous caselet, you would have gotten 2 correct out of 3. Then one passage, single questions, short passages, both of them moderate, definitely worth an attempt, both of them ethics based. Then what do? I go to my penultimate caselet. The last one is after this. Again, a reasoning based decision making, happy beverages, one easy, one moderate, and one difficult. Should I have attempted this? Yes. At the cost of the first caselet, which was very difficult, this one should have definitely been on your list. And my last one, just the kind of caselet that is at the correct position in my test. I don't even want to reach till this caselet. I don't want to read this caselet if I'm trying to maximize my score. I want to definitely solve it after I'm done with the test, but not during the test. Yes, it was a bomb. One, it was I don't know, it was sort of a decision business situation where you would have multiple, you would have a lot of ambivalence when you were reading the passage, and then like the questions were so difficult. It just does not make sense to invest so much into this. So 21 questions done. Where would you see yourself? Verbal for easy questions, 15 moderate questions, 7 difficult questions, expected number of attempts pretty much on the lines of easy, you try to attempt all of them, moderate, you try to attempt 2/3 of them, difficult, ideally you should not attempt any of them, but then ठीक है ना यार, आप बच्चे हो, you guys are going to get attracted to the difficult questions here and there. तो इसीलिए I think ठीक है, अभी हो गया तो हो गया सर, उसमें क्या करने का, गलती से attempt हो गया. So 15 to 16 attempts. Decision making, I would see you guys at 5 easy questions, 10 moderate questions, and 6 difficult questions. That would put me to 21 questions. And as you can see, way too many moderate to difficult questions. So decision making, moderate to difficult, not a difficult section. Verbal, I called it a moderate section. Out of 21, you're looking at approximately 50% attempts, while here in the previous section, out of 26, you're looking at approximately 60 to 65% attempts. So expected scores, as I said, verbal 14 to 15 attempts is what would be decent with an expected accuracy of 80%. That would put you guys at, because it's negative marking, 11.25 at your 98 percentile. 100 percentile, totally worth of 15 on this test. 15 out of 26 would be a fantastic score. 75 percentile, what? 75 percentile seems what? 40% of 100 percentile. Totally worth it. I know of people who would have struggled to score even a 6 on this test because they would have spent too much time trying to figure out whether to, after reading a passage, whether to attempt a question or not to attempt a question. So yeah, getting a 6 on this test was not difficult at all, but people would have struggled only because they could not select the questions properly. That brings me to the decision making section, where I already said I would see people attempting only 50% and 100, a 13.5 out of 21. We are back to 65% of the total score. Sounds pretty similar to the kind of cutoffs that CAT has. That is true. That is pretty much, both of the exams eventually will look at cutoffs similar to each other. So 13.5, 98 percentile would work out to 9.5. A 75 percentile, just 4. Just 4. In a test that has 5 in a test section, if you remember, I said decision making had 5 easy questions. And in such a section, I'm giving you a target of 4. How nice, how polite, how much of a Santa Claus can XAT be? Right. So in this test, this is where you guys would stand at the end of the test. 100 percentile would work out to 42. 100 percentile would mean you are more or less getting into XLRI unless you go into the interview and perform extremely badly. 99 percentile, 36. 98 percentile 32. 95 percentile would be 26. So between 100 percentile and 95 percentile, I see a clear difference of almost 50% of the score. You guys already know the cutoffs that go into each of the B schools. So I'm not going to get into those details. But from the range of 12 to 42, most of you targeting a score of approximately 26 in this test. Ideally targeting a 32, not a 26. A 26 would probably put you out of the bounds of XLRI. So you have, as Saurabh sir said, one more test to go. I really hope you guys will remain focused over the next 2 days. On the other hand, I also hope you guys had a decent New Year's Eve party yesterday, because kar lo yaar, the year has been so stupid that I hope either you had a party yesterday or you will have a party. If not, do it on Sunday. I mean, do it after your XAT. So good luck for your next mock. I will see you guys again tomorrow with the analysis of XAT 5. And maybe I'll see you again or after you are done with your XAT. Stay focused, stay safe, wear a mask, wait for the vaccine. Good luck, everyone. And I'll see you again. Goodbye.